Hi there, John Bishop here. I'm with my very good friend, Dr. Nancy Flournoy, and Virginia, and my friend Eddie. We're going to be looking at a patch called the Nirvana patch. And I think you can see in Nancy's background, there's also a supplement that works synergistically with this Nirvana patch. And so Nancy's going to talk about both the patch and the supplement that work to do wonderful things to help improve mood enhancement and other things, right, Nancy? Because you found something.
We'll learn all about it.
Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Nancy, right now. Here we go.
I will share my screen. And you should see the slide now.
Yep, I can see that.
So I'm Dr. Nancy Flournoy. I'm Professor Emerita. That means I'm officially retired. I'm not getting paid, but I'm still working with the University of Missouri. And if you want to know more about me, I have a website, lightpatchscience.com, in which there's some biographical material and other information about these patches. And both the PowerPoint and the recording will be put up there after this talk as soon as I am able to get it. So tonight we're talking about LifeWave's Nirvana patch, which, as John mentioned, comes with a little supplement box here. Well, you can buy it with the supplement or you can buy the patch by itself. But the combination is important, as I can explain here by just talking about emphasizing these bullet points. So the patch is known to enhance mood, and we'll talk about what mood is, and more specifically about how it enhances mood. And one thing that's really critical, that is significant about the patch as opposed to other things. There's lots of things on the market, lots of supplements you can do for like improving your mood. But one thing that these patches are developed to do is to sustain a good mood so that you're not in a yo-yo up and down situation. The patches, which are little Band-Aids that you put on your skin, are patented, and it's a form of phototherapy. They have, it's crystal that takes the heat from your body, that makes it run, and it then sends electrical signals, light, it sends light back to your body in specific wavelengths, and we're going to talk about what those wavelengths are designed to do. There's no drugs, no chemicals, nothing goes into your body, no physical thing goes into your body. The supplement is actually, we'll talk about the ingredients more specifically later, but it includes a seaweed extract, and it supports healthy endorphin production, and we'll talk about endorphins and what they are. And again, one important piece that we'll talk about is the fact that the supplement stabilizes this whole process of staying in a good mood, not just getting there and then getting off again very quickly. So this is the setup for today. And to begin, there can be good moods and there are bad moods. And so when people think about taking doing something to enhance their mood, they're usually thinking that maybe I'm not feeling so well and I want to feel better. So the extreme of that is depression. And here we have the quote from the tragic situation with Robin Williams, who says, people don't fake depression, they fake being okay. And then we see this other picture here of all these like happy people, and they're all known to have suffered from depression. So So it's a major problem really in the country. Here's some 2022 data from an organization called Mental Health America. And on these graphs of the United States, the light blue is bad. It's where the light blue is highly ranked and the dark blue is lowest ranked. And so on the left, we're ranking episodes that youth have of severe depression. That's reportable episodes. And based on their data, they estimate that over 10% of youth suffer a severe major, at least one severe major episode of depression. And on the adult side, it's about half that much, but here we're counting something much more serious. That is 5% of adults report serious thoughts of suicide. And you can see that some of the worst states for the youth are down here in the southeast, and more scattered around the worst states for the adults. But it's a lot of people that have issues with trying to cope in our modern society. So, so we'll talk a little bit about mood, and mood is, and there are a lot of components go into determining what your mood is. It's based on your experiences. You know, you may have something good happen to you or something bad happen to you. Your brain chemistry then reacts, and it can react well or react poorly to situations that you're stressed by. And then we also have electric, biomagnetic component to really everything that is in our body. An aspect of our life that hasn't been as well studied as the chemistry, which has been studied for a long, long time, but which is becoming increased, is the study of electromagnetic fields and electrical fields is gaining some steam, and you can and it's particularly relevant with respect to these LifeWave patches, because the LifeWave patches are sending signals into your body, much like a tuning fork. And here you have the fork A, which has a certain resonance to it, and you have the fork B, then that ends up getting synchronized together with, so that they're both vibrating at the same level. And this is what the patches are. This is the process by which they act to improve your health, which is to put out a good vibration, and things that are at the same, in the same range then will get tuned appropriately and work better. So we, on the chemical end of things, we have neurotransmitters and we have hormones. So the neurotransmitters are signals from the brain. They're chemicals, but they're carrying messages that go throughout the body and say, make this, make that, don't make this, do make that. And then the hormones are actual chemicals that more directly affect, well, the neurotransmitters will tell the hormones to grow more or don't grow more. So these things work in combination all day long, and they work in combination with your whatever's happening to your day. So it all has to work together. And we have a little picture here of different wavelengths from different reactions that are occurring, and how this is another example of the like the tuning fork, but on the wavelength sort of view of looking at things where these waves from different actions are getting synchronized together, and we'll come back to that. So here's the main place where mood gets managed in the body. We'll see it's dealt with all over the body, but this is like a big center. And we have four components here in the brain. This light blue one here is called the hypothalamus. And right nestled under it is this tiny one called the pituitary gland. And most of our talk is going to be about that little tiny piece of the brain, or things that happen either there or are stimulated from there. The amygdala is this bulge at the end of this long stem, which is the hippocampus. So the hippocampus, so mostly we're going to talk about the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. The hippocampus has to do with memory processing. And you might say, well, what does that have to do with your mood? Well, it's also where your memory gets linked to things like smell and different traumatic events get linked to other sensory experiences that you have, so that maybe when you smell something, it then recalls a good or a bad past event, and that helps influence how you feel. And the amygdala is the real key that turns on your flight or fight response to a situation. So that's sort of this an extreme, and we'll touch a little bit about that towards the end. The hypothalamus is where these environmental factors like hunger and thirst and body temperature come into influencing how you feel. And the hypothalamus regulates the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is what we will, as I say, be focusing on. Because in the pituitary gland, you have 4 chemicals being made, and they're called the happy chemicals. And so we have serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphins. And we have the information from David Schmidt, who is the LifeWave CEO, that Nirvana elevates dopamine and beta endorphins. So those are the 2 things we'll focus on in this talk. And just to say a word, so the oxytocin is, they say, the love hormone. It's the one that makes the mother want to nurse the baby. It's got its own thing going there that is really different from the other types of moods that you might have. So we're going to start with endorphins. And endorphins, so that's a short name, and the name is really short for endogenous morphine. So that means morphine that's made in the body, as opposed to exogenous, which would be morphine made outside the body, which we all know is a terrible curse on our population, where it's overused and not healthy for people that are addicted to it. But when it's made naturally, it's not addictive. So we don't have the same problems that you have with the chemical. Now, 4 different types of endorphins have been identified, and we're just going to talk about beta because that's the one that has been, that is increased by the Nirvana patch. So the The morphine that you make in your own body is more powerful. That is the endogenous morphine. The endorphins are more powerful than the chemical that is used in medicine and in recreationally, irresponsibly. So it makes you feel good though. I mean, that's at least good for a little while. The problem is in your body and in the chemical is that it's metabolized very quickly. So if the endorphins, if you're looking for the endorphins to keep you happy, and you're putting something into your body, half of it's going to be gone in 2 hours. So naturally, the benefits don't last. Now, endorphins are made in the pituitary gland. Well, first, they're hormones. So what are hormones? Hormones are regulatory substances. They control what's going on with other processes in your body. And this particular hormone is produced and stored in the pituitary gland. So here we have another picture of the brain, and there's this little tiny spot right practically on top of the brain stem that is enlarged. And you don't have to look at this whole diagram and all the little arrows, but notice first that it comes down out of the hypothalamus and it looks like a couple of testicles. And then you have all of these hormones coming out of it that go to major organs of the body. So we have the kidneys, the breasts, the bones, the testes, the thyroid, etc. And again, these are messengers that carry signals to those organs to do something. And these organs, like the testes, so it controls, the testes then make testosterone, and the ovaries make estrogen, and the adrenal glands make corticosteroids, etc. So all of the signaling for all of those hormones to go into action comes from the pituitary gland. And there's a feedback loop. So you see the red arrow comes back around, it comes back to the hypothalamus, and it comes back to the pituitary gland itself. So we can talk about one particular pathway. We can talk about one particular pathway, but they're all part of the same system. They're all regulated if they're in unison, whether it's functionally to your advantage or functionally to your disadvantage. And any dysregulation is likely to have an impact across the whole system. So with that in mind, we'll look more closely now about what's going on with beta endorphins. So here we are again, another picture. So here we have somebody running, and the fact that they're running, the brain understands that, and it can feel the heart pumping and the excitement of the runner. And so this is one thing that will cause endorphins to be released. We'll talk about more in a minute, but running would then cause the pituitary gland to reduce endorphins, and they're going to go, out into the brain spaces and get between this nerve cell, this guy that's running, he's beginning to, he's hurting, he's I don't know, pushing too far or whatever. He's got pain, and these endorphins are going to line up here along the brain cell and block this pain signal from getting through. So we've talked about other patches that reduce pain in other ways, and we will again, but the beta endorphins control the pain by blocking the signal to the brain, to and from the brain. Now, it's a powerful, powerful pain suppressor, and people feel like they've been on opioids. They get euphoric, and it's called, in the case of this little running example, it's called the runner's high. So the other thing that endorphins are known to do is to increase dopamine production, and we will take that up a little bit later. So continuing with our discussion of endorphins, we have on the left things that produce endorphins, and then we have problems with endorphin production on the right that is not so good. So on the left, we have exercise. We just saw that little graph of that. But laughing can raise your endorphins, crying, yawning, getting a massage, having an orgasm, meditation, probably other things, but very things that you do normally in your life that have to do with expression will cause the release of endorphins. Now, if your endorphins are not being absorbed normally, then that could lead to depression. So, and if you have some physical problem with them connecting, where they're trying to connect, that can lead to depression. And then if you have too much, if you have higher levels of endorphins than is really good for you, you're just going to feel like you're out there floating through space. So that can be not so good for having a good, healthy, productive life. So once you've created the endorphins, they're going to make, as long as you're not got too many, they're going to make you feel good because, as we've already mentioned, they're going to block pain. They're going to give you this sense of euphoria, hopefully not too much, such that you're not really with the world anymore. They're also anti-inflammatory. They're going to prevent you from prevent or reduce your fever if you have a fever. And then on the right-hand side, we have a list of things that are more structural. That is, they promote connections between the nerves. They regulate your skin pigmentation and hair growth. They maintain your epidermal thickness. This is one thing. Old folks, when they get when the skin, the collagen kind of disappears, and their skin is, what do they call it, brittle, where you can pull it up and it takes a long time to fall down. So endorphins are good for maintaining a nice, thick, healthy platform on which the outer layer of the skin rests. So I want to add into this discussion the role of your brain waves. So the next slide just focuses on delta, but to set the stage, different wavelengths are given, different ranges of wavelengths are given different names. And gamma is pretty high arousal. You're really geared up about something. Beta, if you've got too much beta, you're in a high stress level. A lot of people are in beta most of the time. Beta is the level where you're making the same list of things to do over and over and over again, and you have a problem to solve, and rather than just spend whatever time you want to spend thinking about it and going on to something else, you go over it over and over and over again. I mean, if that's the way your brain kind of, you lose control to your analytical brain. And so, whereas it's helpful to be in beta every now and then, you really don't want to spend a lot of time in beta. Alpha is really the state you want to be in if you're going to take a test, or if you are looking for a parking place. It's when you are alert, you're really with it, that you are relaxed and you're calm and you're cool, and it's nice. Then when you start meditating, you move down into theta, and deep sleep is in delta. You can also get there through meditation, and you can train your brain waves. You can train your brain to spend more time in these different with these different wavelengths by well, I did brainwave training using CDs, but that's another story. So we want to talk a little bit more about delta. So a hertz is the number of cycles per second. So it's really just measuring how rapidly the wave goes up and down. And let's, since we're going, we started out with higher levels, let's start at the bottom here and go up. I should have rearranged this slide, but for some reason I couldn't quite get to that. So if you drop down to 4 hertz, then you start releasing a chemical called enkephalin, and it is it reduces, it's good for to reduce natural stress and pain at sort of the first level. It'll improve your memory, and you can do subconscious learning and problem solving. And when you get a little longer brainwave, you start feeling calm. It's going to reduce your anger and irritability, and you can retain languages better. And you move on down through restful sleep into restorative sleep and profound relaxation. And you get down here to 2.5 hertz, and now you start the production of endogenous opiates. So you're going to start making endorphins at this level. You have to get down to 2 hertz to regenerate your nerves, and you have to get down to 1 hertz to stimulate the pituitary gland to release a lot of hormones that are going to help you recover from injury. Going on down, you start feeling euphoric, and then you really get an endorphin release from the pituitary gland when you're down around 1 hertz. So, meditation is one way to get all of this working for you. You can, and I know I have spent a lot of time in a meditative state because I was, in near death, and it was the way to survive. And I can certainly say that David Schmidt is right, that these patches that we have available to us now can get you to have these effects in a much, much easier way, which isn't to say you shouldn't meditate too, but this is a big help. So now a little bit about dopamine. And remind dopamine is, you have your endorphins are stimulated in the pituitary, and there are receptors in the brain for opioids, and when the endorphins lock into those receptors, then dopamine is released. And dopamine makes you feel pleasure, and it's referred to as the reward chemical. So, it's the one that makes you feel like you've really done a good job, and that and here's a little picture of it. So dopamine, here's the brain again, and we've got kind of a this is the piece of the hypothalamus coming off here. So right in the same area that we were looking at before, just above the brain stem, we have a number of other sort of features. Oh, this is the hippocampus. Okay, and so we have this site called the VTA, and then a couple of others, and this is where dopamine gets produced. So what does dopamine do? Well, it has a function in memory, the reward. That's pretty much, reward's one of the biggies that it's known for. It functions in how you'll behave and how you think. It focuses on your ability to pay attention. And well, it does sleep, mood, learning, movement. It does a lot of things. So it increases your general level of arousal. That is, it's what makes you want to get out there because you want to do something. You desire something. You're going to go seek something out and search. It increases your goal-directed behavior. You want to get something done. It makes you curious and, makes you get on Google and go look up all these things like I did this afternoon so that I could tell you about them. And then it creates this reward loop that that is when you're satisfied you've done something, you feel good about it and you want to repeat what you've done again and again. And so taken to the extreme, it creates addictions. It also has a role in motor function we'll talk about in a moment. So when you're deficient in dopamine, your movements can be delayed and uncoordinated. And when you have an excess, your body makes unnecessary movements like repetitive tics. So dopamine abnormalities are associated with Parkinson's disease and with drug addiction. I'm going to skip this slide just as a matter of time. You can come back to it on my website if you want to read more about addiction and the pleasure-seeking aspects. So prolactin. I mean, there's this interesting thing about these like we got these happy drugs, and then they're related to there's this relationship with the mother taking care of the child. And so here, dopamine actually promotes components in the mammary gland where production of milk occurs. And so it stimulates milk to make different components like lactose, and it inhibits, so prolactin stimulates these things, and dopamine inhibits prolactin. So it's got this complex relationship with breastfeeding. It's involved in pain processing. We talked a little bit about that. Won't say more about that, but I'll show you this picture and spend a moment on dopamine's relationship to movement. We kind of started with endorphins' relationship to movement in that little running picture. And now we have this information that there's this particular region in the brain that regulates movement more generally, not just being happy about movement. So we're talking about whether the movement's smooth or the movement's jerky. So this basa ganglia executes smooth movement. And we're in the same basic region of the brain. In order to do this regulation of smooth movement well, it has to have a certain amount of dopamine. And so I guess these things on the right are a repeat. I've already read them to you, but they're all related then with regard to dopamine in this particular region of the brain. Again, I'm not going to read the details to you here. Again, you can find the slides on my website, but dopamine is involved in cognition, memory, and attention. Now, I will, so what we've been talking about before now with respect to dopamine is what dopamine itself does. But dopamine is a molecule that can be made into something else. And the something else that is relevant to this discussion is adrenaline. And so the dopamine gets down to, adrenal glands are sitting, here's the picture. Here's the kidneys. The adrenal glands sit on top of the kidneys. So the dopamine gets down to the adrenal glands and stimulates the production of adrenaline. And this is the major fight or flight chemical, and it helps you prepare for fight or flight by raising your blood circulation, increasing your breathing, increases your carbohydrate metabolism, and get your muscles ready to go run away from the tiger. And with respect to visceral functions, it is normally produced in the adrenal gland, and a small number of neurons in this particular part of the brain, which is this bulb right here. So right here. This is the hypothalamus right here. This is the pituitary gland. That's where the endorphins were made, and this and dopamine, in addition to being made in the adrenal glands, is made right here in the brain. So now I want to back up in terms of the big picture for just a moment. And I do that because in the talk I heard that David Schmidt, the founder, LifeWave founder, gave, he came back to this point. So where are we? What we've been talking about here, this box right here, is endorphins, and endorphins make dopamine. And above that, a couple of steps here, we have this chemical called POMC with a long name. And it has several, it is the precursor to several things, which include some hormones related to corticosteroids, as well as this melanocyte stimulating hormone. So why do we go back and look at this big picture for just a minute? Well, it's because all of this stuff is happening in just this tiny little area of the brain. It's all right together. And we know that that we have this communication between wavelengths in the brain, and this things getting synchronized together if everything's working well. So none of this production, like of endorphins, is happening in isolation. And if one thing's working well or one thing's not working well, then everything else is affected. So just for a moment, this MSH, there's a half a dozen of these, one over here, alpha, one beta. So without going into them in a lot of detail, I'll just say they play a pivotal role in regulating your skin color, inflammation, the immune system, the reproductive function, whether your energy is in homeostasis, temperature, how temperature is regulated in your body, and your food intake. So that's a lot of things. This molecule called CLIP affects your sleep, and this is short for ACTH, which controls the production of cortisol. So with respect to talking about mood, then if we look at what's going on from this higher level, we see this connection between the endorphins and the dopamine and cortisol, which is a very important hormone with respect to your mood, because it affects so much in your body. And in particular, if you have too much cortisol, you're going to have a weak immune system, heart disease, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, digestive issues, nerve problems, and headaches from depression. Whereas normally it plays a very important role in regulating your stress response, your body's use of fats and proteins and carbohydrates. It suppresses inflammation, regulates blood pressure, regulates blood sugar, and helps control your wake-sleep cycle. So this whole cortical system works in tandem with the endorphin and the dopamine systems. Now, I want to finish the talk by spending a little bit of time on the supplement that goes with the Nirvana patch. So this particular supplement, it's a natural seaweed extract, and it not only supports endorphin production, but it, as I said at the beginning of the talk, it's a patented stabilization process that is to sustain the results. So what's in it? Well, there's vanilla. Okay, we use vanilla when we bake. We're gonna learn a little bit more about vanilla. And then there's this algae, which is Padina pavashishka, which is, which I'll show you in a minute. And then the oil from sea salt. Okay, that's very interesting. And then a few other chemicals to make it work. So what about vanilla? Well, vanilla has been shown to be an antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, neuroproductive in animals. Not much research on humans, but if they were mammals, they did the research on it, probably doing about the same thing in us that it's doing there. The small brown algae, you could put out a picture of it down here, grows in all the Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, and the Mediterranean. That's a lot of space. And it's known to preserve collagen back to our skin, or the bed underneath our skin, and a lot of other parts of our tissues as well. And they think it's by inhibiting an enzyme that that will actually cause hyaluronic acid to degrade. And I don't know if you've ever had problems with your joints, but hyaluronic acid is a supplement that's given for the aches and pains of joint aches and pains. And so if you have something that's degrading it, if you have this enzyme that's getting this out of your body, then you want to stop it. And so what this supplement does is combine these three products with those minerals that I mentioned. And that blocks the degradation of beta endorphins. So by this particular combination, they are going to keep those beta endorphins working in your system longer. And so if you combine that supplement with the Nirvana phototherapy patch, you have an amazing dual system. And there are, John's got one testimony I think he'll give us after this talk, where it's pretty amazing, and there are lots of other testimonies out there about how it works. So I'm just going to close with a note about where to put the patch on the third eye, over on the shoulder, so down near the glands coming out of under your armpit, at your thyroid, right at the base of your neck, or in the middle of your breastbone. So those are recommended places. I put it on the back of my neck, put it on the back of my husband's neck, and I think he's getting testy. And so it's a good patch to have in your arsenal. And with that, I will say we've not made any claims about curing any diseases here. This is a wellness patch, and I hope that you all enjoy exploring its benefits for yourselves. And with that, I will thank you for joining me. And I again say you can find more information on this talk eventually on lightpatchscience.com. So I will turn it back to John as soon as I can figure out how to.
All right, thanks, Nancy. That was exciting.
Oh, glad you liked it.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it, man. I just feel like I know my brain right now.
Oh,
I know.
yeah, well, that's generous.
I know it's how it works. I mean, really, if they would have taught this stuff when I was in high school.
They didn't know this stuff.
No, they didn't know it. They didn't. That's okay.
No, every time I look something up, though, I'm left with another 100 questions, because almost each of these topics could then be a topic by itself. But,
right.
So figuring out what to say and when to stop is pretty hard.
No, I mean, anything like this, like you say, it's kind of like not really very explored. That's what I always feel like LifeWave is. It's like an exploration. It's like a journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And journeys are not meant for the weak of heart. Okay, if you're going to go on a journey and you want to learn something, it's not really meant for the weak of heart. Right. So, if you really want to know something, you just can't watch it on some, YouTube's channel and, just some.
Well, it didn't occur to me until I was actually giving this talk that my dopamine levels must be pretty high, or I wouldn't have spent however many days I spent putting this talk together.
Right, exactly. So, we're every human being, I figure, is functioning on some level. That's what I realize.
But I also wish I had understood the value of the supplement more. Well, I didn't understand it at all.
Yeah, but there's not much on, Nancy, there's not much on the supplement, to tell you the truth. So I mean,
oh no, but you read about these the vanilla and the
seaweed extract,
algae, and there's not much on it, but I found some other patent material.
That's for Nirvana. I think we've done 2 now. It'll be for Nirvana 3. So we'll learn more about that. But I'm saying just from what I could understand from your talk tonight on the brain and how, because pretty much I was just limited to what I understood about endorphins. That's it. That was it. That's the only thing I read. And it was such a deeper understanding of more stuff that's beyond just you know, the endorphins that,
One thing gets me is how related everything is. You
Yeah.
know?
yeah, it's like that little thing that we connected all the pathways and stuff like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, is this intricate, you know? But it's kind of like, I don't know why this isn't taught in school more.
Because it's not that well known.
No,
I mean, you
but
know,
it should be. Maybe in 50 years, 100 years, who knows? It's just like so second nature because people really want to know. And you only get one brain, right? Except
you
for,
want to tell us about your testimony. You want to give us your testimony?
well, you know, my testimony with Nirvana was really a friend who I had. We had a daughter who was 17 years old. And she was in such a state of depression, wouldn't go to school, didn't want to meet anybody, stayed in her bedroom all day long, you know, I mean, and I hadn't been in LifeWave for too long, but I just felt something. I felt, I mean, my gosh, I think I just stumbled on something that could help this person, you know, help my friend's daughter. So I said, I'm sending these patches out, right? And you need to put them on, you know, your daughter at nighttime when she goes to bed. And she said, okay, I'll try anything at this point. So she did that. The first night she put it on her. Obviously her daughter was really reluctant. She took it off sometime, I think in the night, because she didn't have it on the next morning and there wasn't much change, right? And so my friend said, okay, well, you know, I have this friend and he thinks that this could actually help you. Would you try it again? And so instead of putting here, she put it on her daughter's, on the back of her neck. And she kept it on. She, you know, the next day it was still on. And that next day, her daughter was cleaning the kitchen, which she'd never done before. She was just cleaning stuff, cleaning the counters, cleaning everything. So my friend was just like, what has gotten into my daughter, right? And she was like whistling or singing or something like that. She was just happy and she couldn't really understand it. So, but she didn't want to go to school. She did not want to go to school. So I said, well, okay. I told my friend to put the patch on her again on the back of the neck, see what happens the next day. So the next day she gets up, her daughter's up early in the morning and says, Mom, I want to go to school. And so her mom was like, really, are you sure? And they're a very well-off family. They have lots of money. They got chauffeurs, they got somebody to take her to private school and everything, right? So she said, okay, but can I come with you? And her daughter said, yeah, sure. So she sat in the back of the car with her daughter and dropped her off. And so, but my friend has said she was worried. She was calling me. She's worried all day. I don't know if she's going to come home, what state she's going to be in. She went to pick her up, right? She gets in the car. She's bouncing around. She's happy. She's smiling. And her mom says, are you okay? And she says, Mom, what are you talking about? Of course I'm okay. Like she didn't even know that she was in weeks and weeks and weeks of a depressive state, almost kind of like talking about like she didn't want to be on the earth and all this kind of stuff, you know, and I'm like, you're gotta be kidding me. Just for putting a patch? Oh my goodness. So that was so powerful. And like I said, you know, I mean, we're all different. Everybody's different. Everybody has different makeups, you know, physical makeups, mental makeups, emotional makeups. So we never really know. And I don't think David Schmidt has ever said that the patches will work a certain way, like because we figured it out on some test, right? It's gonna kind of work the way it works, right? And you might be surprised how it works on you or works on your friend or, you know, somebody that you've introduced to LifeWave. But there's no evidence about how exactly it's going to work, right? So, but
well, you can see how many factors are involved.
exactly, it's like a maze of stuff. We're so complicated. We're so, unique, complicated, and chemically put together differently, right? Our chemicals are different. And so
I think you get the sense that David sees key things that are important and keeps going for, like going for the stem cells, going for sort of the base. He keeps trying to find the basics.
Right.
And
almost like
and
they call it a baseline, right? The baseline thing that they can not completely verify, but they feel that we're on the right road, right? Which is so much better than, like sometimes with the thing that really bugs me is when I watch, in between a movie or something like that, they'll have the next latest drug or something, and they start guaranteeing certain kinds of results, right? They said, this does this, this does that, this does that. And I've always kind of questioned that because people are so different. How can you just make that? But pharmaceutical drugs go through a certain process, right? And then they're approved.
Right, but still, yeah. So it is misleading because they're making those claims, and there's still margin of error, and there's still, it's not like it's absolute. So it's misleading.
Yeah. And there's sometimes when I thought that it would be nicer if LifeWave could just nail it down to specifics, right? And then I think on the other hand, no, actually you just have to try it and see if it works. And then you'll be the judge of it, whether it's something that works or not because some, advertisement said it would do that, which, I mean, that is the advertising, is to get people to just think, here's a solution to my problem, right? Here's what's going to fix me, right? And I'm gonna order it today, and it's $49.95 for this bottle, right? And I just I don't know, I feel like that's what's really wrong with our society, because people just feed, like companies feed that, into our society, and we just feel
we didn't used to allow the pharmaceutical companies to advertise.
Yeah, time ago. Yeah, my dad's time.
You want to stop the recording?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.